Hi. My name is Rachel Whitfield. I'm 34 years old, and for 11 years, I gave everything I had to a company my father built with his hands, and a loan he almost didn't get. And then he looked me in the eyes and gave it to my cousin instead. I'm going to tell you this story slowly. Not because I think you need the context, but because I spent years not being believed, and I'm done rushing past the parts that matter. My father, Gerald Whitfield, started Whitfield Building Supply in 1991, single warehouse, a loan he nearly got rejected for. I grew up inside that business, literally. I did homework in the back office while he closed deals out front. I learned suppliers' names before I learned long division. By 16, I could read a pallet manifest faster than most of his adult employees. I have an older brother, Mark. He wanted nothing to do with the company. Became a high school teacher in Ohio, married young, coaches Little League, seems genuinely content. No one ever resented him for stepping back. That detail matters. Remember it. And then there was Tyler. Tyler is my father's sister's son. Growing up, Tyler was the kid who always had an excuse. Failed a class? The teacher was unfair. Got fired from a summer job? His boss didn't appreciate his potential. His mother, my Aunt Donna, my father's younger sister, loved him with the specific ferocity of a parent who has never once fully seen their child. And my father adored Donna. That detail, that one, is the key to everything that happened. I just didn't understand it until the damage was done. I went to college for business administration, specifically because I wanted to be useful to the company. Turned down 2 offers from bigger firms after graduation because my father asked me to come home. He said, and I remember this exactly, "Rachel, this is going to be yours one day. I need you here to learn it the right way." I believed him. I had no reason not to. I started in the warehouse. Not symbolically. I mean, I was loading trucks at 6 in the morning in July heat, learning inventory systems, dealing with vendors who dismissed me, until I corrected their math in front of their own staff. I worked through every department over 4 years: accounts receivable, vendor relations, logistics. By 27, I was operations director. The company had grown from 12 employees to 41. I'm not telling you this to brag. I'm telling you because the story my father eventually told about why I was let go was not the truth. And you need to know what the truth was first. For a long time, things were good. My father and I worked side by side, dinner after big contracts. He introduced me to clients as the future of this company. I have an email from him, 4 years before everything fell apart, that says, "I don't know what I'd do without you here. You've got better instincts than I ever did." I saved that email. I still have it. Tyler, meanwhile, drifted. Failed real estate license. Short stint in insurance that ended badly. A car dealership job he quit after 4 months because, in his whiz words, the commission structure was rigged against him. Every time something collapsed for Tyler, Donna called my father. My father quietly helped. Paid off a credit card. Covered a car note. I knew about some of it. I didn't know how much. About 4 years ago, my father started inviting Tyler to company barbecues, then to Sunday dinners, the ones that had always been just our immediate family. One Tuesday afternoon, I walked into my father's office to discuss a vendor contract and found Tyler sitting in my chair, going over financial reports I hadn't cleared him to see. I asked my father about it that night. "Tyler's going through a rough patch. I'm just giving him some structure." "It's not a big deal, Rachel." Within 6 months, Tyler had a title, Junior Operations Associate, a position that, as far as I could tell, had been created the week before he started. Sit with that for a second. A position created specifically for a man with no relevant experience, while I had spent 11 years earning every title I held. I asked reasonable questions. What was his role exactly? Who would he report to? What was his salary, since it came out of a budget I managed? My father's answers got vaguer each time. "Don't worry about the details. I'm handling it personally. You're overthinking this." If you've ever watched a decision get made about your life in a room you weren't invited into, you know the feeling I'm describing. It's not panic. It's slower than panic. It's a quiet, sinking certainty that something is wrong, while everyone around you insists nothing is wrong at all. I called my mother around that time. She and my father had divorced 9 years earlier, an amicable split, mostly about him working constantly and her wanting a different kind of life. She still knew him better than almost anyone. When I told her what was happening with Tyler, she went quiet for a long moment. Then, she said something I've turned over in my head 100 times since. Your father has always had a blind spot for Donna's children. He felt guilty that Donna struggled while he succeeded. He's not trying to hurt you, Rachel. He's trying to fix something inside himself. And you're the one who's going to pay for it. I didn't fully understand that sentence until much later. But hold on to it. It's the closest thing to a real explanation for everything that followed. Tyler's role kept expanding. He started sitting in on meetings he had no business being in. He introduced himself at vendor events as part of the ownership family. Technically true, completely misleading since he owned exactly 0% of anything. My staff came to me quietly, asking if Tyler was going to be their new supervisor. I had no honest answer, because my own father wouldn't give me one. Here's the moment that still sits in my chest. We had our annual planning meeting. Department heads presenting growth strategy for the year. I had prepared for 3 weeks. Spreadsheets, vendor renegotiation plans, a real proposal to open a second warehouse based on regional demand I'd been tracking for over a year. I gave my presentation. It went well. Department heads complimented the projections afterward. Then my father stood up and said, "Great work, Rachel. Now I want Tyler to walk us through his thoughts on company culture and where he sees us heading." Tyler had prepared nothing. He spoke for 11 minutes about synergy and modernizing our brand without a single concrete number. When he finished, my father actually clapped and said, "This is the kind of fresh thinking we need around here." I sat there smiling, the smile you hold when you're trying not to let 41 employees watch your face come apart. I was thinking, he just told a room full of professionals that vague enthusiasm matters more than 11 years of actual results. If you've ever sat in a meeting and watched someone get praised for confidence while you got a quick "great work" in passing, you already know the specific, quiet humiliation I'm describing. 6 months later, my father called me into his office on a Friday afternoon. I thought it was about a vendor dispute. I brought my notes. He said, "Rachel, I've been thinking about the structure of this company. I think it's time for a change. I want Tyler to step into the operations director role. I think you'd be a great fit for a new position I'm creating. Client relations coordinator. Client relations coordinator. 3 levels down, a pay cut. Reporting to the same cousin who, 8 months earlier, didn't know the difference between a purchase order and an invoice." I asked him why. "Tyler needs this. He needs a real opportunity to grow. And frankly, you've gotten a little rigid in how you run things. I think some new energy will be good for the team." Rigid. 11 years of building systems that doubled this company's revenue. The word he chose was rigid. I asked him directly, and I need you to hear this question exactly as I asked it. "Dad, is this because Tyler is family, or because he's actually better at this job than I am?" He didn't answer. He said, "Don't make this about fairness, Rachel. Business doesn't work on fairness." That sentence. That's the one that changed how I saw him permanently. Not the demotion, not even the favoritism. That sentence, "Don't make this about fairness," from the man who spent my entire childhood telling me that hard work always gets noticed. I took the demotion. I want to be honest about why, because I don't want to make myself sound braver than I was. I took it because somewhere underneath the anger I still believed that if I kept proving myself, he'd eventually see the truth. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself Tyler would fail on his own. I was half right. It just took longer and cost more than I expected. The next year was the hardest of my professional life. I watched Tyler make decisions I could have told him would fail. And I tried to tell him, privately, professionally, the way you warn a colleague rather than undermine them. He renegotiated a contract with our largest client, a regional hardware chain, without understanding the volume discount structure we'd built over 6 years. Lost us 11% of our margin in one signature. He hired 3 new warehouse staff on gut feeling. skipping the background checks I'd built specifically to prevent theft after 2 incidents years earlier. Within 4 months, $40,000 in inventory shrinkage. Every time I raised these issues, in meetings, in emails, and I have every one of those emails. My father's response was some version of "Tyler's still learning," or "let's give him room to find his footing." I gave my notice 8 months after my demotion. This was not impulse. I'd been quietly interviewing for 3 months. A competitor, Brennan Industrial Supply, offered me a director-level position at a salary higher than what I'd earned even before the demotion. When I told my father I was leaving, he looked genuinely shocked. He said, "You're really going to walk away from everything we built because of one personnel decision?" I said, "Dad, you didn't make one personnel decision. You spent 2 years showing me exactly where I rank in this family, and I finally believed you." He didn't say anything. He just nodded, like I'd confirmed something he'd already decided to believe about me. That I was being emotional, making it bigger than it was. 2 weeks later, I was gone. No party. No acknowledgement of 11 years. Tyler didn't even come to my last day, though he sent a company-wide email the following week announcing exciting changes to streamline client relations, corporate language for eliminating the position he'd demoted me into, since apparently he didn't see the value in it either. I want to tell you what the year after leaving actually felt like. Because this is the part people skip in stories like this. The part before the comeback. When you're just surviving. I cried in my car, more in that first year than I had in the previous decade combined. Not dramatically. Quietly, in parking lots, before walking into a new building to prove myself all over again to people who had no idea who I was or what I'd built somewhere else. I started therapy for the first time in my life. Mostly because my partner at the time, a man named David, pointed out that I flinched every time my father's name came up on my phone. David and I eventually broke up, not in a fight, just slowly, the way relationships sometimes end when one person is grieving something the other can't fully reach. He said, near the end gently, "Rachel, I don't think you're available right now. I think you're still waiting for your dad to apologize. And you're not fully here with me while you wait." That hurt more than almost anything else in this whole story. Because he wasn't wrong. Almost 2 years passed. I built a life that didn't orbit around my father's approval anymore, which is a simple thing to say and an enormous amount of work to actually live. And then, on a Tuesday morning in March, my mother called. "Rachel, Donna reached out to me. I know that's strange, but she did. She said things aren't good over there." I didn't reach out to my father. Part of me wanted to. But I'd spent 2 years building a version of myself that didn't need to know. Information finds you anyway. In an industry as small as regional construction supply. Over the following months, I started hearing things secondhand. Vendors, old colleagues who still texted me, a supplier rep who asked point blank in a meeting, "Is everything okay over at Whitfield?" Heard they lost the Caro Hardware account. The Caro Hardware account, one of our largest clients for 9 years. A relationship I had built personally, from nothing. More came in over those months. Tyler had restructured warehouse staffing in a way that created massive overtime costs. He'd taken out a business loan to renovate the office, new furniture, a redesigned lobby, cosmetic spending that means nothing to actual operations. At exactly the moment cash flow was strained from lost accounts. 2 PC been with Femother for 15 years, had quit within a month of each other, taking institutional knowledge with them that exists nowhere in writing and took decades to build. I felt something complicated watching all of this. I want to be honest rather than pretend it was simple. Part of me felt a grim vindication. The part that had warned everyone, had the emails, had been told I was rigid for caring about exactly the things now falling apart. But a larger part felt genuine grief. That company had my fingerprints everywhere. 41 employees, people I still loved like family, were watching their jobs become unstable because of decisions I had no power to stop. If you've ever watched something you built get slowly dismantled by someone else's mistakes and felt grief and vindication at the exact same time, You understand the knot in my chest better than I can explain it. It was a Thursday in late October. I was at my desk at Brennan when my phone rang, my father's name on the screen. I almost didn't answer. I'd let 3 of his calls go to voicemail in the previous 6 months. Each one small talk that felt like testing water, rather than saying anything real. This time I picked up. His voice sounded different, smaller. He said, "Rachel, I need to talk to you. It's about the company. I think we're in real trouble." The bank had called in part of a loan after reviewing quarterly statements. Tyler had missed 2 reporting deadlines that triggered a covenant review, which flagged declining receivables and rising overhead. 2 more clients had given notice. And then his voice cracked and he said, "I don't know how to fix this, Rachel. I don't think Tyler knows how to fix this either." I sat there for a long moment before I said anything. And I want to tell you honestly what was going through my head. Because I think it's the most human part of this whole story. I wasn't thinking about revenge. I wasn't thinking I told you so. I was thinking about 34 employees whose families depended on paychecks from a business I had once loved enough to give 11 years of my life to. I asked him, "Dad, why are you calling me? What do you actually want?" He was quiet. Then he said something that cost him more than I think he expected. "I want you to come back. I need you to come back. I was wrong, Rachel. I think I've known I was wrong for a while, and I didn't know how to say it." I told him I needed to think. I hung up. I called my mother that night. We talked for almost 2 hours. She asked me one question that I still come back to. "Do you want to go back because you love that company? Or because part of you still needs him to admit he was wrong?" I told her honestly, both. I think it's both. And I don't know if that's a good enough reason. I sat with the decision for nearly a week. Talked to my boss at Brennan, who was honest rather than self-serving. If this is something you need to do it. But know what you're walking back into. And know exactly what you need from him before you say yes. I drove to my father's office the following Monday. Not Tyler's. My father's, the one he'd had since 1991. The one I used to do homework outside of as a kid. He looked older than I remembered. Tired in a way that wasn't just about sleep. I told him I would come back. But I'd written my conditions down beforehand. Because I didn't trust myself to negotiate in the moment without flinching. President of Operations, not director, not coordinator. Full authority over staffing, vendor contracts, and financial decisions above a certain threshold. Tyler could stay in the company if he chose to, but with no operational authority and reporting only to me. All of it in writing. A real contract, not a handshake and a promise, like the ones that had already cost me a decade. He agreed to every condition without arguing. That's when I understood how frightened he actually was. Not just of losing money. Of losing the thing he'd spent his whole life building. I met with Tyler privately before my first day back. I told him I wasn't there to humiliate him. I told him the company needed structure he hadn't been given the tools to provide. And that wasn't entirely his fault. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said something I didn't expect. I knew I was in over my head about 6 months in. I just didn't know how to say it without losing everything Uncle Gerald gave me. I understood that more than I expected to. We didn't become close, but we didn't become enemies. He stayed on for about 4 months in a junior sales role, no authority, clear boundaries, and then left on his own terms. I heard he's doing freight logistics now, somewhere in Tennessee, and apparently doing well. It took 18 months to fully stabilize the company. I renegotiated the bank covenant personally, sitting across from a loan officer who remembered me from years earlier and trusted my numbers. Because I'd never given her a reason not to. I rebuilt the Caro hardware relationship from scratch, which took 4 months of patient, humble groundwork and a fair amount of swallowed pride, since they'd watched the relationship unravel under Tyler and weren't eager to trust us again. I restructured warehouse staffing back to something sustainable and personally called both senior employees who'd quit, not with a raise, but with a real apology attached. One came back. The other had moved on to something better. I told her honestly that I was glad for her, because she deserved it. Almost a year into my return, my father and I were closing up the office late. just the two of us, going over year-end numbers that were finally genuinely good again. He set down his coffee and said, "I owe you an apology I never actually gave you. Not the kind where I just say I was wrong, the real kind." I waited. I spent years feeling guilty about how much easier my life was than Donna's. Tyler became a way for me to fix that guilt without ever looking at it directly. The cost of that wasn't mine to pay. It was yours. I knew that somewhere, the whole time, and I let you pay it anyway, because it was easier than fixing what I actually owed my sister, which had nothing to do with you at all. I didn't say anything for a while. It didn't erase 11 years. It didn't erase the 2 years I spent rebuilding myself somewhere else. But it was real. The first time he'd ever separated his guilt about Donna from his decisions about me. Out loud, without defending himself in the same breath. I told him, I needed to hear that a long time ago, but I'm glad I heard it at all. Today, I run that company. My father is technically still the owner, but he's stepped back almost entirely, fishing, and according to my mother, finally being a halfway decent grandfather to Mark's kids, something he never quite managed while he was building the business. I think about the parts of this story I haven't told anyone outside my therapist and my closest friends. The parking lot crying, the relationship that ended quietly because grief took up all the space where love used to be. The months of rebuilding a professional reputation from a title 3 levels below, where I'd already proven myself. This story isn't about revenge, even though I know that's the version that's easiest to want. It's about the slow, specific damage that happens when people you trust choose comfort over fairness and rename it something else so they can sleep at night. And it's about the fact that rebuilding yourself after that kind of betrayal doesn't happen in one dramatic confrontation. It happens in 100 small, unglamorous mornings where you choose to keep going anyway. If you've made it this far, I genuinely want to know, do you think I made the right call going back? Some of my friends say I should have let it collapse, let him live with that consequence. Some days I still wonder if they were right. But I built that place. Every system, every relationship, every account we still keep. 11 years of my hands are in that building, whether my father ever fully recognized it or not. Walking away permanently would have meant letting someone else's mistake erase something that was mine too. Thank you for listening.